Richard Gere storms off Jimmy Kimmel's stage after an explosive confrontation over his activism, turning a regular interview into a blaze of anger. What made him have this explosive walkout? Let's break it down if you're new to the channel. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with where you're watching from. Let's see who's watching for this iconic clash. The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio in Los Angeles is charged lights keen crowd, abuzz with excitement. Richard Gere, the legendary actor and dedicated humanitarian, is the night's headliner. His subtle intensity fueling the room. He's here to promote his new film, a drama of refugee adventures tied to his decades-long human rights activism. Gere's had his share of late-night talk shows, but he's adamantly protective of his causes, and Kimmel's penchant for going for the lightweight daggers might push him to his limit. Gere wants to keep the focus on the work, not personal zingers, and any going off rails risks his ire in the wings. The atmosphere already instructed Gere's close friend and advisor Sarah, a gentle but firm pleader, cautioned the producers. Stay with the film and his work, no cheap tricks. She knows Gere's strong dedication to his causes and his distaste for frivolous treatment. And her voice is unilateral, the producers assent, but their murmurings suggest schemes for a playful interlude, believing Garrett's charm will grease any rough spots. Sarah's not swayed, her eyes narrowing as she watches them scheme. They're playing with fire, she says to a stagehand, who gets rolled out of the loop. In the green room, Gere's sipping tea, eyeing a monitor as Jimmy Kimmel begins the show. Jimmy's in his comfort zone, his monologue mocking celebrity foibles. The audience is laughing, Gere's face is serene, but his hands clutch the cup of tea. Sarah's attuned to he's primed for a test. The stage manager signals. It's time, and Gere stands, adjusts his scarf and heads towards the curtain. No bother, just a guy who's ready to meet the spotlight out there. Jimmy rapping sort of about a charity viral joke. The crowd laughs at cue. He moves on to Gere's intro, his voice warm. The only one, Richard Gere. The band plays a soulful riff. The crowd goes crazy, and Gere comes out. His stride slow, a courteous smile on his face. He shakes Jimmy's hand briefly and sits, his position relaxed, but eyes watchful. The cheers disperse, and the air tightens, the room focused on the two men under the lights. Jimmy starts secure, asking about the film, its themes of displacement and hope. Gere leans, his voice genuine, warm, engrossed in the refugee situation, connecting it to his work with international organizations. The audience is with him, nodding, drawn to his sincerity. But Jimmy's got a show to put on, and he's going after a lighter tone. He tosses out an aside about Gere's jet-setting activist life. And does he ever get a day off? Saving the world? Gere's smile gets tighter. His answer curt. It's not all about me. The crowd laughs, but there is a subtext to his words. One Jimmy misses reading a chance to play. Jimmy takes pulling up a tabloid piece on Gere's high-profile charity galas. Smirking so Richard is all business meetings? Or do you slip in some partying with the elite? The crowd laughs, some gasping, buying the jab. Jerry's eyes flash, his jaw set. That's not what this is, he says, his voice low, firm. The studio hushes. Jimmy's smirk, faltering. Sarah in the wings mutters, here it comes. Gere leans forward, his tone sharper. I'm here to talk about real issues, not your flippant spin. The crowd stirs, sensing the heat, and this clash is about to blow up the Jimmy Kimmel Live set. Silence, Richard Gere's stern words. I'm here talking of real issues, not your flippant spin cutting through the air like a lash. Jimmy Kimmel, shocked by the rejection, tries to laugh it away, his chuckle feeble, uneasy. Okay, Richard, all stern, serious tonight, he says, sweeping aside the wisecrack, but the crowd stiffen their laughter now. A nervous buzz, Gere's eyes stay glued on Jimmy, his anger with the wry jabs at his activism, smoldering a storm building ready to unleash. Backstage, Sarah's fists are clenched. Her whisper to the stage manager, icy, told him to keep it real. The stage manager, irritated, signals the control booth to prep an ad, but the director's stalling, ratings soaring with every second of Gere's ferocity. Jimmy, getting on the wavelength, bitter, readjusts his knot, trying to get back to the interview. Let's talk more about your film, he says, his tone forcing calm, hoping to reboot. He asks about the refugee story, seeking to access Gere's passion for the cause. Gere replies, his voice warm, steady, plunging into the human cost of displacement, his work among refugees grounding his words. But then he halts, leaning forward, his tone hardening. That's what this should be, he says, glaring at Jimmy, not your cheap shots for laughs. The jab finds mark, and the crowd reacts. Some clapping, others gasping, the room splitting into camps. Jimmy's smile is wavering, his fingers tapping the desk. He's had to deal tough guests. But Gere's pinion frustration getting away from him is collapsing his show. He tries to deflect, asking for about the production problems of the movie. But Gere's not granting it any leniency. "You're missing it," he says, cutting off Jimmy, his voice raising somewhat. "I did come here to talk something that is dear, not to be your joke for tabloid spin." The audience shifts, some crying out, "Go Richard," while others boo, bemusing it for drama. Jimmy look at the ground producer who's urging to move on, but Gere's voice gets edgier. His anger evident this whole production. He states, pointing to the set, "It's meant to belittle what's true." The crowd's din mounts off Gere's believability. Jimmy Throne attempts to lean into comedy, smiling. "Hey Richard, we're just kidding around. No harm intended," he says. But the words ring hollow, and the crowd senses it. Gere shakes his head. Slow, wily teasing, he says in his voice heavy with contempt, "You think human beings are interested in your puffs and not actual matters? They desire substance?" Some of the audience stand applauding while others jeer. The studio crackles with anxiety. Sarah offstage whispers, "They're in trouble now." The security team, 2 suit-clad men, move closer to the stage, but they're cautious, conscious of Gere's gravitas offstage. The producers scramble voices, talking over each other in the control booth. The director's conflicted numbers are enormous, but this is running out of control. Let it continue, but be prepared to shut him down. He issues instructions. Jimmy, even on stage, attempts to regain authority, questioning about Gere's co-stars. Hopefully, respect will suffice. But Gere's had enough of the script. "You don't understand it." He remains firm in his tone, cutting you. "You think you can turn my work into a joke? I'm here for the cause, not your humor." The audience cheers, some chanting his name, others yelling at Jimmy to fight. Jimmy's mask falls, his eyes narrowed. He leans forward, letting go nice guy front drops look. "Richard, you're here to talk?" he says, his voice biting. "Perhaps show a little appreciation for that." That's the spark. Jar's eyes flashing. His voice deep, bitter appreciation. He says, his rage boiling over. "For what? Hijacking my life's work, turning at your shallow puff." The audience is lost. The shouting, shaking the set. Some standing, filming, others yelling. Jimmy's face reens. His hands clasp the desk. The floor producer indicates a break, but cameras continue rolling, the moment too large to interrupt. Jimmy stands, attempting to assert control. "All right, we'll take a brief break, everyone," he says. With forced laugh, the band hits, but Gere's won't move his gaze. Unfaltering, and the crowd's abuzz. Sensing this battle over substance is hardly over. The Jimmy Kimmel live studio is a storm. The band's hasty riff crashing against the crowd's mad screams, liquor, and yells of Richard Gere's name. As Jimmy Kimmel introduces a commercial break, Jimmy standing waves to the audience. His smile strained, trying to look in charge, but his eyes dart to the floor producer, who's wildly gesturing to cut cameras. They'll keep rolling. The director in the booth, hooked on the flying ratings, Gere hasn't budged. His glare locked onto Jimmy, his irritation at the playful jabs at his activism, a serious, unyielding presence backstage. Sarah's glaring at the producers, her voice low, grating. "You set him off." The security crew, huddled near the stage, shifts, awkwardly awaiting direction as the band winds down. Jimmy slouches, sitting over equipment, his voice low off mic, but the front row captures bits. "Let's just get through this, Richard," he says, a mix of plea and irritation. Gere's response is a grumble. "You crossed a line." The mob's buzzing phones up, snatching the moment already spreading online. Jimmy feeling the room slide attempts, trying to stir up the crowd, throwing up his hands. "Folks, we've got Richard Gere, let's give it up." The clapping is scattered, drowned by shouts, some for Gere, others for Jimmy to force back. The room's a powder keg, and Gere's struggle for serious discourse is the spark. Gere sits upright, his posture unperturbed, his face set. His mind is not here for applause. He's here to defend his cause. The stage manager, sweating, signals Jimmy to wrap up, but Jimmy's not letting go. He grabs a cue card, asking about the film's refugee plot. Trying to move on to safe ground, Gere cuts him off, his voice warm but biting. "You're still not getting it," he announces loudly enough for the mics. "I came to talk about real human suffering, not to feed your tabloid spin." The audience erupts, some standing cheering, others booing. The divide. Stark, Jimmy's jaw clenches, his usual charm cracking under Gere's relentless push. The host tries to laugh, but it's forced. "Richard, it's just a show," he says, waving at the set. "We're here to lighten things up." Gere's eyes glint, his voice dropping, deliberate. "Lighten? You're trivializing lives for laughs, not issues." The words hit like a slap, and the audience reacts. Some shouting support, others heckling the noise. Overwhelming. Sarah in the wings nods grimly. Knowing Gere's in command, the security guys move in closer. Their presence heavier, but they're cautious, sensitive to Gere's. Commanding presence backstage. The producers in disarray, voices clashing in the control booth. The director's torn, the numbers are enormous, but this is breaking apart, keep it going but cue up to cut. He yips Jimmy on stage, tries one final time to hijack things, asking about Gere's latest charity work. His tone almost desperate, but Gere's done with the game. You're wasting my time, he says, his voice a whip. This is no longer about my movie anymore. It's about you, thinking you can scoff at my work for ratings? The crowd on its feet, some chanting Richard, others shouting the studio, electrified by their energy. Jimmy's patience wears thin. He leans forward, his voice cutting, dropping the host's polish. Richard, we brought you here to speak, he says, stabbing at the desk. Have some respect for that. It's a mistake. Gere's eyes blaze and he leans in. His voice low, slicing. Respect's gained, he states, not by making my cause your cheap piece. The crowd erupts, the sound deafening, some filming, others screaming. The director finally blows the brake, the monitors flashing to commercials. But Gere is still sitting, his stare unshifting. Jimmy stands talking to the floor producer, his gestures frantic. The house lights dim. The band's silent and security's closing in. But Sarah's already underway, prepared to assist Gere, the crowd on edge, sensing the struggle substance fight long from being finished, and the stage set for a settling of scores. The Jimmy Kimmel live stage is a restive whirlwind. The commercial break barely working to keep the crowd in check's fervor as they whisper chant Richard Gere's name, others arguing in the seats. The monitors flash with commercials. But the cameras are still live, covering every second, for the feed. Gere hasn't changed his position. Steady stare, eyes fixed on the desk where Jimmy Kimmel stood. His outrage at the glib snipes about his activism. Ablaze with power. Jimmy's offstage, his voice biting as he banters with the floor producer, waving wildly. Sarah's in the wings, her eyes locked on the security team. Two muscular men in suits, now at the stage, tense but wary. The director's voice crackles through headsets. Get Jimmy back, but hold it in check. The break shatters, the lights snapping up, the band stumbling into a short riff. Jimmy regaining his smile, tense, sitting with strained ease that doesn't hide his tension. We're back with Richard Gere, he speaks to us, his voice imposing warmth. But the audience's applause is sporadic. The room's still sensitive from Gere's position on serious discussion. Jimmy tries to steer off, asking about the refugee themes of the film, in hopes of anchoring things in Gere's enthusiasm. G speaks, his voice warm, even talking about the human toll of displacement. But then he shifts to acerbic. That's what this should be, he says, pointing at the set. Not your shallow spin for laughs. The crowd stirs, some clapping, others agitatedly shuffling the split visible Jimmy's fingers. Wrap a cue card, his smile fading. We're just keeping it light, Richard, he says. Reclining, appealing to the audience, that's the show. Right? Some clap, but boos overpower them. The room leaning toward Gere's passion. Fun. Gere instructs, his voice low, sharp. You're dramatizing real suffering for ratings, not fun. The crowd roars, some standing clapping, others screaming for Jimmy to push back. Sarah, watching, mutters, he's got the room. The security guards move closer, their presence heavier, but they're still holding back Jimmy's control phrase, his voice rising. Richard, you're a guest here, he says, pointing at the desk. We're showing you respect, maybe give some back. The crowd feels the challenge, their noise spiking, Gere's eyes squinting, his jaw clenched, his respect. He speaks, his voice stern, strong. You don't get it by mocking my work. For cheap laughs, the words cut like a punch, and the crowd erupts. Some applauding Richard, others booing the studio, shaking Jimmy's face, blushes, his hands gripping the desk. He tries to laugh, but it sounds hollow. This is a talk show, Richard, not a UN meeting. He speaks, his tone acerbic. You want to sermon search for another stage, that's the spark. Gere leans in, his voice firm, uncompromising. I came to talk about human lives, he says, nodding to the audience. You made it about your superficial articles. I don't play that game. The audience explodes, some standing recording, others shouting, the set trembling with their energy. Jimmy stands, defying the host's regulation. His voice escalated. You know what, Richard? If you don't like it, you don't have to stay. It's raw, a straight shot, and the audience loses it. The noise deafening, Sarah moves in towards the stage, her eyes on Gere, ready to intervene. The floor producer indicates security, whispering, be ready. The guards move in their steps. Heavy. Gere doesn't stand, but his presence overpowers, his eyes fixed on Jimmy. His frustration a palpable force. Maybe I won't, he speaks. his voice steady, cutting through the crowd. Roars, some cheering his defiance, others jeering the room a battlefield. Jimmy's had enough, his flushed face pointing towards Gere. Then go, he boasts, boisterous voice final. There is gasps from the audience, the commotion peaking, some standing in vain, documenting the director yelling cut, but the camera's still rolling, the moment too huge to kill Gere's. Static, his fierce stare, unyielding, and the stage being a beat away from hell. The Jimmy Kimmel live set studio, a crucible. Jimmy Kimmel's sharp command, then go. Disposing of profuse advice, cheers, liquor, and roars of Richard Gere's name. Gere still seated, faces. Jimmy's glare with a matching, unbroken glare, his irritation at the flippant slurs over his activism. A fierce, unbreakable energy. The crowd is standing on its feet, some shouting for Gere, others cheering Jimmy on phones up. Broadcasting the mayhem, live, the cameras, oblivious to the director's frantic instructions, roll on, fueling the crash for millions backstage. Sarah composed her eyes, darting from Gere to the security staff. Now steps onto the stage, hands raised but wary. The ground producer's voice sharp, reminding Jimmy to pipe down, but the host's too deep in the battle. Jimmy, his face red, indicates at equipment again. His voice strained. We provided you with a platform for your film, he says with a sweep of his arm. You don't get to trash it. The audience responds, some cheering Jimmy, some boos. The commotion, a tide wave, equipment leans forward. His voice clear-cutting trash. You're the one humiliation of humanity for kicks. The crowd gasps and booms, some applauding at his corner, others in shock. The crew shuddering with adrenaline. Sarah on the wings, nods. A thin smile breaking for knowing Gere's, holding ground in the moral ground. Jimmy's thrown, his lips parting. But Gere never breaks his tone. Even bites you, people need your shallow gags. No, they want you to talk on real issues, real lives. The audience breaks out. Some applauding, rising up, others shouting. The room divides further. The security guards move forward, in one advancing, his voice firm but wary. Sir, time to leave, he says. With a regard for Gere's stature, Gere stops his glare, halting. The guards hesitate, but one steps forward, inviting to G, sir, please, he says, almost pleading. Gere doesn't look at him. His gaze on Jimmy, giving one last blow. Keep your jokes, Jimmy, they're not worth my time. The audience goes wild, cheers and gasps, shaking the set. Jimmy's face burning with the sting of Gere's words. Gere walks off stage, his pace, measured, Sarah by his side. Jimmy alone, the band stumbling in awkwardly. Well, that was Richard Gere, he says, coercing a laugh. But his voice cracks. Gere's stand leaving him shaken. The response of the audience is conflicted. The energy splintered backstage. The producers are in fright, all the director screaming about damage control. Sarah accompanies Gere to the green room, where he takes his scarf, unfazed. Told him to keep serious? Sarah grumbles. Gere just nods. His point made the internets ablaze, clips of Gere's walk-off. Going viral, fans applauding his resolve, others disputing the fight. The show struggles on, Jimmy rushing through the final bits. His glow hammered by Gere's unwavering stance, a moment that will frame talk show brawls for generations. The Jimmy Kimmel live stage still shaking from the ring of Richard Gere's exit broadside. Keep your jokes, Jimmy, they're not worth my time, ringing. As the crowd applauds, liquor and gasps turn into a sleepless hum. Gere's left, making his way off stage with Sarah in tow, leaving Jimmy Kimmel alone. His face flushed from the unflinching stance against flip activism. Jabs, the band's riff dying out, and the cameras still rolling in defiance of the director's order. Catch Jimmy's forced gesture to move on the audience, some remaining on their feet. Filming, others arguing, is too charged to be settled. Their adrenaline hitched to Gere's demand for serious debate in the wings. The producers at large, voices colliding as they try to salvage the night, while security awaits, uncertain what to do. Now that Gere has exited the stage, Jimmy sits clutching a cue card, his voice shaking as he tries to turn. Well, folks, that was Richard Gere, he laughs, teasing. But the reaction of the crowd is uneven laughter. At odds with murmurs, he rushed into a piece on the next piece, but the room's not with him, still buzzing with Gere's call to give highest priority to human concerns. Not tabloid spins. The floor producer sweating cues to maintain heading, but the booth directors yelping about damage control, the ratings huge. But the show balancing on the outside of the green room. Sarah guards the entrance as Gere puts on his coat. His face calm, determined. They thought they could play him, Sarah grumbles. Shaking her head, Gere just hums, his mind already elsewhere. The studio's energy doesn't recover. Jimmy forces through the last segments, his jokes fall flat. His customary charm seared by Gere's firm stand, the audience still tweeting, posting, filming, is more bothered about Gere's walk-off than the show itself. Clips of the confrontation are blowing online, trending worldwide with fans applauding Gere's stand for his humanitarian work, others debating his drastic exit. The producers discuss trying to spin it, but there's no spinning this. It's a moment that's already bigger than the show, a story that'll be retold as a talk show legend. Gere, meanwhile, walks out of the studio into the night in Los Angeles, the roar of the crowd fading into the distance behind him. Sarah at his side, checking her phone, complaining about the internet speaking wildly. "You good?" she asks. Gere nods his stride firm, like a man who's drawn his line and won the city's lights ablaze, but he's not moved his focus on the issues he struggled to bring to the front. Back in the studio, the show stumbles to a close. Jimmy signing off with a forced smile. The audience's applause half-hearted, the Gere's walk-off tale eclipses everything, raw, unscripted showdown, which showed the price of producing serious work against a man's sheer determination. This was greater than a talk show rant. It was Richard Gere composed and with fire, knocking down Jimmy Kimmel's shallow jibes and taking room on serious matters, leaving him unforgettable. That is the kind of narrative which hangs around people, and I am happy you are here to witness it through. If you're hooked on these high-intensity showdowns, press that subscribe button to catch more. We're creating a team that enjoys the real deal. Leave a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from. Maybe New York, Mumbai, or some small town off the grid. What do you think was Gere? Right to walk? Or did he cross the line like the video share it with your mates? And let's keep this discussion going. Stay bold, stay true, and I'll catch you in the... And I'll...